What's going on, guys? It's your boy back again, Coach Dominic Frazier, with my beautiful co-host Kiani Adams, and we are here with another episode of the No BS Fitness Prescription Podcast with a unhinged approach. Today's guest we have from none other of Prescript, Eric Bugera, one of the main Prescript educators and forward-thinking people that I've had the pleasure of learning more about and following over the past year as I've gone through the Prescript level 1. And we're just going to deep dive on his journey, who he is, where he's coming from, where he's going, and all things applied biomechanics and sports performance. So, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, man. I'm at this stage like one of the probably foremost content creators, quote unquote, for Prescript, like on an active, regular basis for them. So I know anyone that goes through the 16 weeks with Shallow, inevitably like that journey ends with me as well. Like it's I'm like the shallow. Like I'm on the back end, just sort of filtering all of his content through just another lens and just infiltrating my influence into your brain as well.
Yeah, I definitely can say with going through that course, it was very, very eye-opening with having already so many years in the field, but working on other credentials and whatnot. The biggest thing that I liked of your approach and still like is how you were always asking us for, hey, send me your video so I can who's using the cable this week, shoot me some shit so I can break it down. And I mean that's dope, because a lot of people don't understand, exercise selection is one thing, but then also based on how your, biomechanics and anthropometrics are, what's the best way for you to do it? There's 1,000 different ways to do, a Bulgarian split squat, but are you doing it the best way for you to get the most out of it and things like that? So starting off, Eric, man, just introduce yourself and tell us, who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's always fun to do the intro thing because it's like when you accumulate enough experience on a resume and you have to start cutting and snipping like things that are no longer professionally relevant anymore. Like I've been doing this such a long time that I'm like, wait, where do I start the timer now? Like I have an undergrad in kinesiology. That was the first thing I sort of pursued out of high school, and like knowing kind of like the question lines and the prompts, it's like why is this relevant? It's because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I didn't have like a career in mind. So when I got to the point where I could choose to do university or get into a trade, whatever it was going to be, I'm a kid, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to avoid responsibility as long as possible. So we're going to go to university instead. But kinesiology was the only thing. Like they hand you a pamphlet and it's like, hey, choose, engineering or choose like something that's a real person job. And I saw kinesiology and I was like, okay, well, I'm really getting into fitness for myself. Like I'm trying to transform my own person, build my own whatever. It was the only thing that stood out to me as something that either I was personally interested in or that I viewed could personally benefit me. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. And then very thankfully, like part of the way through, I realized like, oh no, this is actually like truly a passion. And it's rare that your passion and your career align. Like a lot of people are very passionate about things that they unfortunately cannot monetize, or there isn't a space for them to actually be like career orientated towards. So for me, it was either go athletic therapist, physical education teacher, all of which we have within the Prescript community and sick careers. None of which I never foresaw myself being a physical therapist. Never foresaw myself being on the athletic therapy side of things either, because on the field in a clinic, that wasn't really, I didn't think I was smart enough for it, first of all, but I didn't really see it for me. And then physical education, I'm like, I have my own son now, and this is the only child I ever wish to educate. Like I'm not about kids, man. Like go everybody that has multiples, go everybody that's in childcare development, stuff like that. You guys are heroes. I can only handle mine. So it left me with like, all right, I'm going to get a kinesiology degree. It literally is kinesiology. Stop. It's not like kinesiology, physical therapy stream. It's just that. And you're like, what do you do with that? You become a coach, basically, personal trainer. I'm like, okay, well, that seems like, at least to get my foot in the door in the industry, like that seems like the logical place to go. So I graduated. I went and did the box gym thing, as most people, at least at the time, do. Now a lot of people get directly online, but I did the box gym thing and grinded for like 6 to 8 months to get a clientele base that should take you 6 to 8 weeks, primarily because I was in like the core inner city gym of the chain. I had a complete youthful ignorance. I had no idea this was a bad idea in terms of like, actually, now that I'm saying the story out loud, I had the option of the flagship, most lucrative gym in our city, like the location that had the greatest degree of personal training revenue for like a decade.
Yeah.
And then there's the one I took, which was like where personal training went to die. I'm like, well, this is one bus, that one's 2 buses, let's go. And then it taught me everything. It taught me the work ethic, taught me the grind, taught me like through, again, just youthful ignorance, like just keep going after it. But at the same time, it burnt me out pretty severely. So by the end of about 2 years of getting to the top of that particular gym, like self-sustaining clientele base, the whole thing, I went back to school under like the pretense that I'm going to be able to serve clients better if I get nutrition. Cool. That sounds like a plausible deniability. But the real thing is I was burnt out. I get to the end of the second degree only to realize that, okay, I can't really apply this, similar in the way that I didn't want to get a physical therapy degree. I'm not going to go and do like a dietetics internship and all the final steps to become a professional in this field. So it basically told me all the things I'm doing right, all the things I am doing wrong, what I can do for myself, and all the things there is a literal litigation-based barrier between me and being able to like meal plan someone, at least in my area. I can't meal plan you. I can't do a lot of things, right? So I'm like, cool. This was informative, but did nothing for me. And then I got hooked into doing a master's degree in kin. So I went back to kin, did that. And then that's the one that literally like Sparta kicked open every single door that I could have ever hoped for. I ended up getting published off of that, which is a huge thing for a master's degree. It's also huge for my own personal confidence and credibility, because I then went back to a box gym with a master's degree in a better location and immediately exploded to like full clientele base, like the guy. Eventually I got into education within the gym chain itself. And that was kind of like my first taste and foot in the door. But circa the pandemic, when that was about to literally like the last month or two before the shutdown started to happen more globally, Shallow came through and he was starting to do some education, like continued ed for our company under contract. And he was the first person, like arrogantly or not, like holding a master's degree, having the experience I'd had. Again, maybe a little bit of ego too. I was like, I don't really need a lot of continued ed that's going to come through because it's all for people that have literally no background. It's like the most entry level stuff. I saw him on social media a little bit. I was like, okay, he knows who he's talking about. He's not full of shit. Cool. I'm kind of proud of this company for going in this direction. Let's check it out. And then we met. We had a loose rapport during the time. I mostly was basically trolling him and being honestly the kind of relationship that you see in labs a lot of times for Prescript, where there's that one person in the back that just triggers a rant. That was me for him. That was literally me. I was like, I know enough about what I know to like give you a little bit of a lit fuse and then just fade into obscurity. But then as the pandemic kicked off, we got shut down. I took PSL 1 online and we rebuilt that rapport. We're in contact more. And then he kind of planted the seed like, hey man, if you ever find yourself, like if you leave the industry or not the industry, rather leave the commercial scene and you're looking for work, we'd be cool. It would be really neat to kind of see if we could work together in some capacity. So I put that in the back of my mind. And then a couple more shutdowns were on the horizon. Like I could feel the second one happening. And my burnout didn't alleviate itself from school, and it didn't alleviate itself from having like a couple weeks of just video games in my underpants during a lockdown. So like I kind of knew it was time for a change. So I took that step and went online and almost immediately got involved with Prescript in the capacities that I did. I was attending labs myself. I was being very community involved, community orientated, to the point where I eventually created like the primordial version of what the technique lab is now. And then kind of the rest is just like more of a formalization, and the rest is history from there. So that's kind of like baby me to more or less now.
Okay. So that pretty much gives us the overview of your journey to becoming a Prescript coach. So let's dive into, for those that don't know, right? Dr. Jordan Shallow is the creator of Prescript. Can you give the audience pretty much what is Prescript? Because a lot of people don't know about it, and it's like the people that are in the Prescript circle, we're a different bunch of individuals. So give us that.
We are definitely a different bunch of individuals. The analogy I give oftentimes for like the coaching staff ourselves, like we're all very similarly personality-wise, similarly minded, while still holding onto our uniqueness, and as you've probably experienced now from all the coaches. But it literally didn't happen this way, but it's like kind of metaphorically, it was like to launch Prescript was for all of us to kind of simultaneously stare at each other and just be like, are you fucking seeing this shit right now? Like, what is actually occurring on a broad scale in the field versus what each individual one of us knows to be true in our hearts about biomechanics, functional anatomy. In terms of me, exercise physiology is a big one for me as well. Kind of having a more formalized background, them like Shallow and Junta from a chiropractic background, me from kinesiology, like nutrition, masters, the whole thing. And then anyone else on the team has their own background, but we all just sort of saw what was happening, saw a massive gap in the quality of education, but also just the depth and mechanistic standpoint that things were being taught. And that's where the root of Prescript really took hold. Like Junta and Shallow are the founders, and then slowly but surely their influence attracted the community that you see now, but also the coaching staff. It was all very organically formed. And so Prescript is a continued education company for all things in the fitness industry. It could be for personal trainers or strength coaches. It could be for clinicians of all walks of life, or just enthusiasts that are really trying to learn more. But it takes the standpoint of a principles-based approach using biomechanics, functional anatomy, and training as the vehicle to sort of put all the pieces together to help people understand how to actually apply all the things they may have experienced or known. And I'll use myself as the example, being like, I'm captain. I had a master's degree in kinesiology before I took Prescript level 1, like one of the earliest iterations. And in a lot of ways, it's the thing that made me understand the things that I thought I already knew. Like, I know all these words, I know all these definitions, I'm good at what I do, but here's Shallow explaining to me, the guy with the master's, here's the information that you think you know, here's how it actually works on an in-person basis, in depth, practically applied, and here's also why. And here are methods of replicating that on a person-to-person basis, because you're using underlying principles, you're using like actual principle-based approach, as opposed to here's my specific method that I happen to like. It's like, no, I'm going to look at you as a person who has a body, and we know how bodies work. We know like the room for error on an individuality basis to work around, but we generally speaking know by and large the biggest rocks to turn over on a person-to-person basis, from exercise execution, programming, and the whole thing. Let's use that source code to then be better coaches and trainers. And so that's really the root of it. It's at the like the too long didn't listen version is like, we provide continued education credits. We're a continued education body for fitness. But on a much deeper level, it's let's teach you how to weaponize and wield the things that you know from experience or from your own certifications and degrees, and then make it more globally applicable to everyone, because and honestly increase your confidence in using it, because you know this is a principle, this is a underlying mechanism approach. It's not a this is what I feel approach.
No, I can definitely agree with you there, because I'm the same. Like I've got 2 degrees, and I started taking Prescript to go with me getting ready to retake the CSCS, and I was like, these both go together. And then as I'm doing Prescript, I'm like, holy shit, like this is everything that I've technically ever wanted out of the industry from a learning standpoint, and then putting it together. I look at Prescript. You guys are like a Swiss Army knife. It's like how you said, there's different levels of education, but you guys all came together to create this beautiful thing to give back to coaches, to help empower them themselves with their own knowledge base and so forth. So I definitely love what you guys have built and what you're building going forward.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
thanks,
that.
man.
I was gonna say that I haven't taken the Prescript training side. I took Prescript nutrition, and I plan on taking Prescript training. But what I can say is I'm on the email list for the training stuff, and I read the emails, and they're so detailed. And I'm like, I have my CSCS, I have my DPT, and it doesn't even compare to what's in the email. So I'm like, yo, I have to get inside this course. But I say all that to say, what I think is missing in the fitness industry is exactly what like coaches like you bring. It's like the detail, the nuance, and the application. I feel like a lot of times we're training based on, or a lot of people train based on pure feeling, and just personal experience. So to have that, like you said, be a foundation and be confident in that, it's groundbreaking. And I think it takes your skills to a next level, whether you have the highest degree or you have certifications. And I think that should be the focus. and that's missing in the industry.
Yeah, I used the word the nuance of it all, because I feel like nuance, especially in the social media age, social media space, nuance is something that gets used almost like a smoke bomb, so people can say something against the grain and just kind of like not have people dig in on it. But as you say, like if you ask me why, I'm going to tell you 3 to 5 layers deep why, depending on how far you dig. Like, we can go, because I want you to understand. I want you to understand that it's not an arbitrary choice, and that's for everyone on the team as well. Where when we have nuance, I can apply that same logic of how many layers deep of why is this nuanced sort of deviation from the norm? Why am I making this choice? Here's 3 or 4 or 5 levels as to why. So it's not just, again, like in this one random example, do as I say, not as I do. It's no. I'm going to tell you exactly why I made this deviation. And here are the hallmarks or the tracking, like breadcrumbs you can trace all the way back to why I made that choice.
Love it. Love it. So a big question that, and I'm sure you get it as well, but a lot of people that we all interact with, they're like, oh, I need an in-person trainer. Online's not going to work for me. That just doesn't work. Now, you have a very good grasp on what I would just call like the breakdown of video analysis and things like that. So what do you feel, would you say, are the differences that you think make remote coaching, online coaching necessarily better at this day and age and time, especially with social media and things like that, compared to how we've looked at it in the past?
Right. I think compared to how we looked at it in the past is actually one of the more important parts of that question, because when I first started in the industry, it was about 2010, 2011. And there was very, very small levels of online. And those that were online, you basically were like, this is my bullshit detector. Like, this profession can't be online. What are you talking about? It's in-person personal training. This is how it works. To their credit or discredit, however this works. Most of the things, at least locally for me, I was like, yeah, this is hot garbage. Like when I saw and was able to see someone's program or how they delivered whatever they did, like, oh, it's purely cookie cutter, copy paste. Everybody gets the same thing. It's your 100% chicken and broccoli for your diet. You're 100%. Everybody's doing the same. Plyometrics for cardio. Like it's all the way back into the Stone Age level of things. And it's like, okay, well, this is why it has to be in person, and you need someone credible. The whole thing. Whereas now, and to close that loop, this is all to say, like, there's a very fine niche of clientele base that may even be qualified or benefit from online back then. From a coaching standpoint, most people couldn't deliver a product online. And from the client standpoint, most people absolutely needed in person way more than they could ever benefit from online. That's kind of flipped on its head a little bit now, where the vast majority of people, in my opinion, can benefit from some semblance of online coaching, even if just from an accountability standpoint to get them on the right foot. And there's still a sect of people that absolutely will require in person. It could be physical rehab. It could be like an age demographic thing. It could be an accountability thing where they literally need a physical appointment. But there's still going to be some. So the product needs to fit the person. But I do think that the advancement in people's ability to deliver at baseline a product that will actually help people move forward and see the results, that's improved dramatically. And then, as you're sort of speaking to at the beginning of the question, the impetus or the emergence rather of like technical analysis and feedback using videos, using whatever, and then the quality going up and up and up. There's still like a wall. It's almost like there's a level system to it where you'll get a certain degree of feedback, and then you'll level up and all of a sudden see all the things you couldn't see up until that point. And it's just like seeing in the Matrix. Like it's almost like an enlightenment. But that's the biggest kind of shifts I've seen moving around now. From technical analysis, from that standpoint, like it's almost the same as in person. It's the 10,000 hours. It's the reps. It's being able to understand at like bare brass tacks, bare minimum, how is a body generally supposed to move? How is this movement pattern generally supposed to look? What are those nuanced accountability factors I have for your previous training, injury history, your body size, shape, the whole thing, like limb lengths? Okay. And then can I see some of the things that maybe I only see from being very experienced, like this very subtle hyperextension of your elbow? That might get passed off, but to me, it says X, Y, and Z data point. Oh, the plate face is actually moving in this very specific way relative to the camera angle. That's going to give me data downstream as to why that might be happening and give me something that I could extrapolate on for a client. like foot pressure, knee things, like wrinkles in your shirt is the one of the most insane things one of our coaches ever pointed out one time. And then he pulled back the veil on it. I was like, oh, this guy is fucking right. It's not a smoke and mirrors. The reason why I knew that is because the wrinkle on your shirt, it had to do with like T-spine extension on like an incline dumbbell press, and like how it altered the appearance on one side versus the other, or something like that. It was incredibly detailed. And then you start pulling on that thread, like, wait a second, that it gave the information he's saying. But it's like layers upon layers upon layers of experience, and being able to see certain commonalities between the movement pattern and then on camera, where can you pick up those details? It's a practice. That's what it is.
I feel like there could be a whole like course on video analysis.
Definitely.
Yeah, I feel like the people need it pretty desperately, honestly, because it's the difference between you're going to do 3 sets of 10 versus we're going to do periodization for the right person, or whatever analogy you want to make. It's like it's either you're doing the most superficial version of it, where, all right, buddy, that looked great, you didn't fall down and hurt yourself, to, okay, I need you to work on your brace because I saw this small degree of hip flexion here, whatever it might be, right? Like then you struggle to find the person that has the credibility, and you get back into the whole rat race of who is the qualified educator in fitness, but now throw in who's the qualified educator in the fitness space on social media.
And that is the question.
So that's a great area. I do think that though what made me gravitate to your page is your the technique reviews that you do.
Yeah.
How did that idea come about? Because I think just watching those, I learned so much about things that I wouldn't have picked up on just from those simple things that you discussed.
Yeah, we got like 2 to 3 layers of that one. So it kind of goes to my involvement with Prescript is it's kind of all over the place. I do some of the newsletter copywriting. I do the Prescript collective generally, like all of the oversight of the content creation, most of the content creation itself. But the technique lab that I alluded to in my intro is something that is now like a mainstay offering within the Prescript collective. And it is literally like, we're going to come together as a community. We're going to host a lab, like a Q&A 1-hour Zoom call, where the actual participants of the lab themselves are the ones that will submit training footage for us to, as a group, break down and analyze, for them to understand, okay, here are the concepts you're learning in PSL 1, 2, whatever the course you may be in is. Here is something in real time, live, for us to show you what you should be seeing from these courses and how to apply it. Safe way, reps on reps on reps. So you get them like 1,000 practice runs before you ever see it in person. Like, it's that kind of an idea. And to me, the idea originated actually from like old West Side stuff, like Dave Tate, Elite FTS, where they would do these group training sessions. Yeah. And like they're all squatting, and you have like 2 people doing side spotting or like plate loading or adjusting the monolift height. You had a back spotter, and then anyone else in the room is just like yelling cues or just hyping them or like giving them feedback between your reps. And I was like, that kind of setting resonates with me. Like, I want that kind of like ability for everybody to see what they see and then contribute to the person's improvement. So that led to the technique lab itself. And then now on my own personal page, I kind of like spoke a little bit with the guys. I'm like, hey, it kind of cross-pollinates a little bit, but I feel like it's something that I can offer on a personal level as well. And now that's what I do. And contrary to how most things on the internet exist, mine is literally voluntary. I'll throw out a call to action every once in a while on my page, being like, hey, I need to restock the supply of videos. If you're interested in participating, shoot me a DM and I'll get you sorted on a intake reel, or an intake form rather. But it's purely voluntary. It's not me just ripping someone's content and putting my head over top of it. And more than that, there's no intentionality of ripping them down to be like, look how smart I am. I am literally here to use your content as a vehicle to educate you, to improve your lift, but also educate others that may view it. And the feedback has been tremendously positive, and similar to your feedback as well. Like, it gives people the opportunity, the way that I'm able to highlight things and kind of like usually dig it on a specific topic per video. It again gives them that there's the written content in the caption, which is one component to learn from. There's my auditory like breakdown. Then there's the visual that you're seeing. So it kind of gives an all encompassing, depending on how you learn or if you need to pair them, it gives you that insight as to what you're actually seeing from my level of experience. And then the final part of that is it's always an open conversation. I am a single coach. I have a ton of experience. I'm quote unquote the educator in the space, whatever that means. Make your comments. Let's break it down. And I swear to God, as this podcast and everyone that hears that is my witness, I will curate a space that is welcoming to comments. And I'm not afraid of being said that I'm wrong or given a different perspective. I want to foster dynamic conversations so that if someone has a different coaching perspective, so long as it's constructively applied and constructively produced, I'm not going to be right all the time. This is a blind read. I'm going to see these videos basically for the first time, aside from like incidental copy paste, like get it onto my thing. It's going to see it for the first time. One I just posted, I was not happy about because I said, I made a recommendation that I had to not erase, but I had to like almost course correct in the caption because I'm like, I kind of fumbled that one. I don't think that's the best way of like handling this. Yeah, this is going to happen. It's live. It's first read through, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you said there was the fostering of community, how you do it voluntary and you're not ripping people down. That unfortunately is a thing that a lot of trainers, coaches, influencers, whatever they do. That's like a thing now to do on people's posts and pages. And it's like, instead of like how you said, uplifting and helping them and actually showing like, hey, this is how you can improve these lifts or movements. It's more people, well, let me show you what the fuck you're doing wrong here and how my program would make you better, things like that. So I can definitely appreciate, the path that you're taking on that.
I think I also want to add, I think it's refreshing, but I think when you, I think they call them stitches. I don't even know what they're called. When you take somebody's video, it's stupid, but I think it's wrong in the sense where, yes, you're turning somebody down, but there's so many different reasons why somebody may be doing something. And without that insight, it's kind of not right for you to say if something isn't the right way to do it. So I think when you have the caption and you're explaining, and you also have somebody volunteering to submit their form, there may be specific things that they may tell you, like, hey, I may have a hip injury or back injury, which you may know, and you're going to take that into consideration when you're giving that feedback. So all the nuance and the context is there. And I think that's what's missing when we're getting just 30-second reels or a minute reels of just breaking somebody down. And that's the small details are what is going to like transform somebody's training.
Yeah, it's the difference between look how smart I am and please let me help you. Like I'm going to speak pretty much the same phraseology, the same vocabulary. It's going to be all the same stuff, but it literally is just how you approach it. Like I'm not trying to get a viral video because I just roasted someone unmercifully for no reason. Like there's enough of that nonsense on the internet already. Like it's a matter of whatever community, whatever following that I've developed over the last X amount of years on this platform. That's a lot of genuine follows, because for those that don't know, like my content stream started, to be fair, it absolutely started me just posting my squat, bench, and deadlift film from like early days. And then I fell off because I can't stand filming, at least in the gym I'm in. It's just such a pain because the angles aren't there for most of my stuff. And I just don't like to impose upon other people, even though most people are cool. But B is like, I'm tired. I don't have the mental bandwidth to be like interrupting my flow of training. Just I want to get in and out, right? And then it evolved to like literally writing on a image and now video platform. Like I'm the furthest from optimizing what this platform's algorithms are designed to do. So anyone that's on my follower list, that's a very authentic and meaningful follow, because they've had to like dig all of the nonsense of this platform out of the way in order to willingly read a max text caption and learn something. Like they've had to donate their attention span in a TikTok sort of era where if it's longer than 3 seconds, people are like switching off the account, going to the next thing, right? So anything that I'm doing, like that's the main purpose, is to authentically deliver information to them, because I know that they're craving something like that. And it has, like I've said, it's gotten tremendously positive feedback. And I really hope that it keeps like just rippling into how other people carry themselves on the internet.
Nice. What would you say if you had to pick 3 of your top training principles that you teach, like the skills of auto regulation, using reps in reserve or RPE? What would you say are some of the things that you like to teach, and then maybe something that you feel a lot of people are missing implementing into their training protocols?
I think I can probably spin it off of one statement. I ran the Prescript hypertrophy course before we kind of like pulled back a little bit on how diverse our offerings were and pulled it back to like kind of standardize into PSL 1, 2, and 3. And then nutrition arm has been woven in this year. And then we're going to probably re-expand into some of the more niche topics again in the following year. But the year that I did run it, the tagline of the course is adaptability, or excuse me, pliability isn't, wait, what did I even say? Pliability is indicative of mastery, is I believe the phrase that I used. You can tell it's been a while. But the even if I paraphrased my own quote, pliability is indicative of mastery means that the more fluid you're able to be, that tells me that you kind of know a thing or two about the adaptation you're trying to drive. So for hypertrophy, it's such a broad range of sets, reps, implements, tools. You have such a massive array of things that will work, and then a handful of people that can kind of help point you in the direction as to why they do work. But that pliability concept, like being able to choose the course that's best for the person in front of you, as opposed to trying to like square peg round hole everybody into one specific method to get to where they need to go. That's probably the number one premise that I run with, from the context of like, I am the everyman. I am a personal trainer of the Gen Pop of the NARPs. And I have a life that is very challenging to prioritize training in right now because I have a young family. So I'm pretty much permanently under recovered. And it really highlights the need to auto-regulate, as you mentioned earlier, like to a significant degree. But my training, although it's challenging, it's not as challenging as I would like, not because of tonnage per se, but because of extreme fatigue. My place in training has not backslid to a significant degree because I kind of knew how to make those pliable changes over time. Set and rep schemes, exercise selection, the whole thing for whatever season of life I happen to be in. So that's probably the absolute biggest one. The next one is the realization that pretty much everything comes down to foot pressure, stacked ribcage over pelvis brace, and then like I think that's basically it for the most part, especially lower body. You can make the analog for the upper body being like hand pressure. But for the most part, and I've hung out with my clinical friends enough that are going to espouse mostly the same thing. But if someone has my knee hurts, my back hurts, my ankle hurts, insert whatever injury, like most of the time, if you pull on that thread long enough, you'll find their foot pressure is off or their brace is off. And one of those two things bleeds into the next thing. And all along the way, it's like directing force into places you don't really want it to. So someone has a ACL issue, probably center mass control. Probably going to be that. That's going to be foot pressure. That's going to be a couple different things. Probably involve your brace. Someone has a hip shift or an SI problem. Definitely going to be your foot pressure and your brace. And you just keep just like throwing out issues. I'm like, I can tell you why if you want to dig in on it, but usually it keeps coming down to that. So training almost like from I have an ouchie and a rehab standpoint, it gets almost monotonous because I don't need to see you move to know that we're just going to overhaul those two things and probably see a lot of progress. I'm going to see you move so I can make faster decisions and hopefully not make you feel like I'm just ignoring what you're saying. But that's like kind of how my brain works with all these things. And I made a post, and this can be kind of like the third one. But training is assessments. So
Yes.
Pliability is indicative of mastery, whatever the actual phrase is. That's going to bother me now because I know it's a banger of a statement, but it's been so long that I forgot my own statement. But
when you get it back, we'll put it up.
Right? That foot pressure and bracing basically solves all your problems. And then what was the third one I just said? Sorry, dad brain's starting to happen. What was the third one I just mentioned?
You said foot pressure, pliability and mastery.
Yeah.
And then
I just bled
everything is an assessment.
Everything. Yes. Thank you. Because it bleeds off the last statement I said where it's like, I don't even need to see you move. Everything is an assessment. I just made a post recently about that. Depending on what your needs, your goals, your previous injury history are, how you feel about your current block of training, what you've been doing currently, it kind of, again, you almost see in a matrix, it gives you breadcrumbs for what you might see in their movement patterns. But even before that, I mean, I don't like most static assessments because most of the time I'm picking someone up that's midway through like training. It's not like I'm going to be like, all right, we're going to stop everything. We're going to take a session or two or maybe a week, and we're just going to see how you're moving across the board. It's like, no, I'm going to integrate that into genuine workouts that are they're adjacent to what you're typically going to do. But I'm going to use training as a way of seeing how you move. I'm going to do constraints. I'm going to do positions. I'm going to do implements. I'm going to change things up. So like a half kneeling landmine press, half kneeling cable row, unilateral everything's, just to see how your control over end ranges of motions are, how your stability and your bracing would be. And then beyond that, like I'm going to say a statement, and I don't mean it as horrible as it sounds, but I don't care about your previous coaching or your previous experience, because I'm going to very rapidly mold you to how I speak and mold you to how we are going to develop our own individual rapport. I can pick up your training from in the middle of whatever you might be doing, but I don't need to see you RDL per se, because I'm going to teach you within 30 seconds how to do it the way that I would teach anybody how to do it. So everything is an assessment, or your training is your own assessment. That's kind of like the third one I'd roll with, because I am just going to take you and I'm going to mold you in my training image. And then I don't need to see basically anything else, because it's a very rapid process. The same, probably more rapid and more expedient than had we actually stopped to do assessments and then spin off some grand diagnosis or some grand prescription off of that. I'd rather just be like, all right, let's do a week of actual hard training just in certain positions. It'll tell me everything I need to know. And then as I'm seeing those videos, I can then superimpose sets and rep schemes very pliably for your needs. And I can also teach you about foot pressure and bracing, and then we're done.
Totally. I totally agree with you there. Because I've said that to a lot of clients and potential clients. They're like, oh, well, I've been training for this long, or I've been doing this and I already know how to do this. Well, then one, why did you reach out to me? Two, and I try to tell people this jokingly, it's like, I care what you're saying, but I don't care. Because when you could have worked out for 20 years. When you come to me, our training agent relationship is 0. So we're now building your training age from that perspective. If you already know how to do certain exercises, that's great. But now I'm going to hopefully enhance the way that you do them from the lens that I'm looking at, which is pretty much, what you were saying.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if I take you at face value and you're like, well, I know how to hinge, cool, then let's move on. And then all of a sudden I see it for the first time, there's this massive gap. I'm like, well, I just gave you X amount of time of doing it incorrect with me as well. It's going to just derail your experience with me. Like I hear you. I care about you and your previous history and your lived experience, but doing it my way now.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that when it comes to training, I think people spend a lot of years accumulating workouts, but they never actually hone in on like the things that we're talking about: foot pressure, like exercise execution, whether it's a lower body exercise, upper body exercise, and then like trying to improve within that. I think people are just going into the gym, working out, and like checking off a box, but not paying attention to like the small details. So I think that's the approach you have to have if you want to be like a higher quality coach beyond just do 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 15. So I think taking it to that next level is what most people need, but I don't know if everybody's ready for it.
Mm.
Agree with you totally there.
When it comes to you dealing with people who have, let's say, an injury, whether it's knee, back, hip, how do you kind of like use that approach with a person that may be concerned about like their injury history?
Yeah, it's primarily going to be like, I mean, the biomechanics of it all, but basically revisiting it. It could be any injury, really. It's the same general premise, but like there's the 3 major hubs of stability. And when you say hubs of stability, you can say hubs of mobility as well, because they're same. But shoulder, hip, and spine are responsible for a vast majority of the movements you're going to make. From a compound perspective, like an integrated movement perspective. So your hinges, your split squats, your bilateral squats, pressing, pulling, the whole thing, right? How you organize your spine and how you organize and stabilize your extremities as they interact with each other. That's going to be the major things that are going to either be protective or lead to an increased risk of injury. So when someone has said injury already, you kind of look at where the pain is, where the pain point is, like if it's their knee, if it's their ankle, it's whatever. And you kind of go upstream to where the most proximal hub is. And you kind of always just integrate the core because that's the secondary feature of everything. And you start to dig around in there. Like, is it something that is so guarded or so stiff that they lack the active range of motion to perform the tasks they have been, and they just are repeatedly now dunking into their own structure, or they're in a bad position and just overload something? Is it a technical thing where they just didn't know or didn't have the eyes for it? Most egregious that I've been picking up on lately, like there's foot pressure, but if you go up one notch to the shin angle itself, the shin angle is very indicative of foot pressures, but also center of mass control. Like, are you too far back on your heels, meaning that more of your center of mass is going forward? Are you on the toe? Because everybody sees the toe line. They see if you go on the ball of your foot or on your toes and the heel comes up, that one's obvious. But is your shin going laterally or medially? Okay. Is your shin going backwards towards your own body? Like, what are those indicative of? So someone already has an injury, and wherever it happens to be, I kind of do that up and downstream analysis. And again, usually it falls back down to, let's clear whatever restriction happens to be there. Let's mobilize. Let's teach them positioning and stability and rebuild it if necessary, because a lot of people you'll encounter will have strength of the prime movers that has outrun the ability for their hubs of stability to actually root them in a position of safety to actually perform that output. So you got to build that deficit up, and then you're back to off to the races with clean technique that they've been able to actually assimilate.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, Mr. Training.
I'm nerding out over here. I'm taking notes and everything.
Yeah,
this is good. Have you worked with since we're still talking about like exercise selection, have you worked with people with FAI, like any like hip issues? And
oh, it's a giant pain in the ass, bro. Like, because
I'm thinking I'm probably gonna send you some squat videos, and you're probably gonna be like, holy fuck, but we'll have some fun.
Probably, because like, name any of your favorite acronyms, and it's like, okay, is it for realsies, or is it just something is stopping you in a very similar pattern? Dude, that's the most common thing ever. Is just like, you get someone that has like either, because the next step will be, is that a diagnosed thing that you got a scan that showed you on a piece of paper that there's an impingement or there's a tear? Because like, and this is not me ranting at you specifically, but just more broadly, the royal you. Because I, in my naivete, will hear someone say, like, I got FIA. I'm like, okay, shit, that sucks. Okay, here's the playbook for circumventing that. And then I realized, oh, you don't have shit. You have a tight insert, whatever it was, that just manifests as a similar symptom, right? So step one is, as you were alluding to, like, I'd see how you or anyone else moves. And then typically it's going to be some adaptation of what I just sort of mentioned. It's like, where is the technical breakdown, either because of an immobility or restriction? And then how do I start to tailor your specific technique? Because let's go down this road. Rotation happens everywhere. Some places it's more specifically supposed to happen. In other places it's available, but you'd prefer it not happen as much. One example is hip rotation versus tibial rotation. The tibia is capable of rotating. Oftentimes for a lot of people with knee pain, hip pain, it's rotating too much and then getting cranked and stuck in certain positions because it's trying to find space to provide an upstream joint, see the hip. So someone with like FIA or any sort of my SI joint itself hurts or anything like that, you can start looking at how they're moving, knowing that there's going to be some form of restriction or compensation even now, even if it isn't true FIA, like there's something going on that's restricting them. And you kind of start troubleshooting, like, okay, is this a nervous system thing? Can I see at the level of like the shin? What does your shin look like? What does your foot look like when you're training? Like, shoes off, socks on, don't be a weirdo. Are you full foot pressure, flattened out? Is your foot able to move around, or is it a brick? Are you on the outside of your foot, too heel dominant, too toe dominant? Are you off center in some capacity? Like I said, is your shin all rotatey and like your knee and toes point that way, but your shin points that way?
Right.
That's a big indicator that you've been chronically compensating for something. You go up and probably the knee just hurts, and that's the stop of the knee. It's like, yeah, that shit hurts when I bend it. Okay, cool. Then you go to the hip and you're like, all right, how much anterior pelvic tilt is currently occurring? Are you able to actually get your ribcage down and brace truly? And if you are, can you hold that while you actually move? Or is this like you're just a plank champion and anytime you're in a dynamic motion, you can hold it? Okay, that's something else. Is there straight up static tension in your hip flexors, in your glutes? Probably avoid piriformis. I'm not the biggest fan of digging around in there anymore because it just causes usually more problems than it's worth. Mm-hmm. But when we revert back to the hip flexors, which is more femoral acetabular impingement syndrome, is I believe what you were raising.
Yep.
That's the general area of that spot. Is it that, or is it something just domino affected? Your adductors are all fucky, and then your iliopsoas complex into like rec fem crossing the hip line into your core. Are those things either fucked up or inactive? And I'm going to say inactive. And yes, all your muscles are always active. You can't activate your glutes. If you're standing up, your glutes are already active. Cool. That's great.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you with that one, though.
That's it's definitely a thing. But also, if they're still moving improperly, let's probably like help them and not just throw that out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the major ones. Like I've alluded to foot pressure and bracing, but in this specific example, something like FIA, I'm looking at what the adductors are doing. Are you so craned into external rotation that your adductors are just basically not contributing almost anything at all? Or they've been so dysfunctional in contributing to, say, pelvic stability that their IR property is getting overwhelmed, or anything else that they should be doing, like hip extension, it's kind of all messed up and they're out of position. So usually tapping that one back to center helps a lot. And then are you all air in your brace, or are you all like obliques in your brace, or are you getting like the TVA, the obliques? Is your rectus abdominis pulling you down into position, or is it just like big air, like the older school style Q, where it's just all air? Because usually to me, that's indicative that your rectus abdominis, your iliopsoas complex, anything that crosses like core and hip at the same time, that general framework, is that working as a abdominal core unit? Or is it just basically your hip flexors going haywire, trying to like latch onto things? So you might have impingement syndrome, or you might need to put the Pso-Right on a certain spot and then do a bunch of crunches to fire up your abs in isolation of your hip flexors, and kind of start seeing and poking around and seeing what kind of change you can make. From there, and like anatomically, you're going to have your own femur length. You're going to have your own femoral head length, but also femoral head insertion angle in your acetabulum that also has its own unique socket depth. This is all to say you don't need to memorize that. You need to understand that each individual's squat depth, their squat pattern, their hip width, or their stance width rather, you get room to like move it around a little bit. The old, does this feel better or worse? Like if you were to go to the optometrist and they do like the slides over your eyes over and over, and it's like, which can you see better with, one or two? And they just keep going down that rabbit hole over and over until you see perfectly. That's kind of what you would do. Like steamroll all those muscles, make sure they're doing good. Activate the abs in some capacity. Again, we're going to use activation as just a blanket. Make sure they're the thing that is contracting, not other things. Make sure your abs are doing ab things. Then just start troubleshooting the stance. Make sure you're not physically, from a skeletal perspective, trying to put yourself in a position that your body doesn't want to go into. That's your squat day. There you go.
Okay. I was totally asking that for myself, but because I've never been able to squat like back squat. I've never been able to squat parallel, but we'll chat. We'll chat.
Yeah, because like you get that, and like I'm gonna say some shit that I hope my physical therapist is like either gonna nod yes on or whatever. But like the
Probably
phrase that like the not okay. So this is a very correct in a transient and a circumstantial way, but not everyone needs to squat to parallel. Not everyone needs to pull a deadlift off the floor. However, most people should be able to, if they understand individuality in this application. Like, so your stance, if I'm just like, shoulder width, feet forward, high bar only, if I do all these like sort of unilateral decisions that are going to go against what your body is actually shaped for and like individual anthropometric considerations, you're probably going to run into your own structure almost immediately. And it's a very unpleasant feeling. And either you're going to round out or you're just going to get stuck, right? So not being able to squat to parallel, there is a physical restriction on top of a technical error that's happening for you? Or is it you're one in the very few people that I've ever encountered that physically cannot under any circumstance? Because if I hand you like a counterbalance squat and we just start dicking around with your stance for a day, we could probably find a position for you with correct center of mass control, correct bracing, where you'll hit parallel. Parallel is not a huge ask for most people. So the very minor amount of people would be authentically in a situation like you where you never have per se, but I feel like most people can. And then it's just an individual case by case basis.
Right. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I've done it like once or twice. Once was when I lived in Miami and the Dolphins doctor came in and did some acupuncture type thingies, and then boom, I could do it for like 30 seconds. But the biggest takeaway that I got from that was, I mean, how you said, like, and a lot of people, they miss this, but everybody's body is different as far as what type of squat they should be doing, or what type of press, or any type of movement. There's variances for everybody based on, you know, their anthropometrics and their mechanics.
Yeah,
Kiani, what were you about to say?
Sorry, I agree with what you're saying. I think when it comes from a movement perspective, I think when you break down all of like your movement patterns, I think there's certain principles or things that you want to see across the board, but there's a variation in how you get there. So telling somebody to squat shoulder width apart is not going to work for me. I think I need my toes a little bit more, my hips a little bit more externally rotated. I do better with that. And then you may have somebody who has a lot more like ankle mobility and they can do like a narrow stance squat and they have a little bit better hip mobility than me. But I think knowing those nuances on an individual basis is what allows people to like squat to parallel or deadlift from the floor. But if you never play around with that, it's going to be hard for you to get there. And I think also what's important to mention for people listening is just because you have a diagnosis, whether it's just from a simple evaluation or from a image, I think none of that, for me as a physical therapist, none of that matters to me. I don't really care if you have a diagnosis on MRI, and I don't care if like all of your tests are popping up positive for like a labral tear or impingement. I more so want to see what you can do because the body's very adaptable, and as long as we address the restrictions and the symptoms that we are seeing, you don't have any red flags, I think you can do a lot more than what that diagnosis says. So I think when people are told they have XYZ diagnosis, it gets in their head and they're like, I can't do this certain movement. So I would say go through the steps that Eric gave in terms of like activating the abs, the core, playing around with foot position, foot pressure, and then troubleshoot it that way before you completely like write off a movement. Because you see that a lot online. You're like, oh, I have jumper's knee or tendonitis or a labral tear in my shoulder, my hip. I can't do this. And it's like, you probably can. You just have to work up to it. So
yeah, one of the it circles back to like underlying principles, functional anatomy, applied biomechanics, like doing it from a principles based mechanistic standpoint. That was the entirety of the breakdown with like what Dominic's FIA could have been, right? Like, and it was something that popped in my head as you were describing that, and kind of coincides with what I said. It was like the whole like backwards walking on a treadmill or just backwards sled drags and stuff like that. Like I have to do it. Yeah, like I have to do it or else my knees will explode if I do anything else. Like, well, so you literally from like, let's trace it like one order of magnitude lower. That is center of mass control.
Right.
You would get the same benefit if I hand you a counterbalance squat and you push it way out in front of your body and brace real hard and then do a squat. It's center mass control. It's putting more load ahead of your body by extension of the long lever, making it easier for you to have your nervous system allow you to send more center mass back, meaning that your foot pressure will even out as opposed to you being too far on your toes. If you're too forward on your toes for too long at a time, you're putting too much pressure through the tendons because of just more mass being shooting through them. Not enough glute activation trigger everybody, but not enough glutes contributing to your anchoring and your actual hip extension. And everything's going to be painful. So we can either walk backwards, or we could do a counterbalance squat or any analog that would facilitate the same thing. But basically what I'm getting at is people attribute this magical property to a backwards walk up a treadmill or like a reverse sled drag, which works. That's not the point of this rant. It's not to take that tool away. It works, but it's to give people the understanding of at the root of it all, what is actually happening to clear that restriction or to make that pain go away or to facilitate movement so that you have options.
Right.
Totally agree.
I was going to mention the whole walking backwards on the treadmill. I think people do that because they think it strengthens their quads. And then they turn around and like avoid any other like knee dominant position in their training. So I think people like have the right intention. They know it works, but then they don't understand why, like you said. But then in their training, they're not doing anything to get to the point where they don't need to do that anymore. So I say all that to say, how do you educate people or clients on knee over toe positions? Because I feel like there's people who still believe knee over toe is bad, but then you have people who know that it's okay to do, but they may have pain doing knee dominant positions, so they don't know how to build up to that, and they may be scared. So like, how do you educate somebody on that? I feel like that's always like a hard thing depending on the person's mindset.
Such a deeply triggering question, because I remember like this is how old am I now? How old was I then? This is like back when I was like 2013. This is like 12 years ago. Jesus. I read a paper that was old at the time. It's probably in the physical therapy-ish realm, but it was like it introduced it was literally the shear forces across the knee from a parallel squat or a more deep squat, because that was the whole argument of the era. And it mentioned the muscle wraparound effect. And I was like, well, why? We know that's a thing. So why are we completely throwing certain positions out with the bathwater? So the wraparound effect is literally just, think of your brace, especially if you're wearing a belt that's going to help promote that. Your spine is going to receive pressures, physical pressures from a muscular engagement standpoint, of fluid ball pressure, like a Valsalva pressure, from all directions. In doing that multi-directional, all-directional circumferential style of pressure, you're creating a rigid system that's going to stay upright. It's basically using equal forces on all sides, or as equal as we can get, to make sure that it is supported on all sides. So if we have shear across the knee, the muscle wraparound effect is you have muscles on all sides of your knee that are going to help support that joint in its most flexed positions, aka calves, hamstrings, quad. They're all like wrapping around that joint and providing joint stability in those positions as well. I read that and I was like, why is this an argument? Like, anecdotally, doesn't hurt, but anecdotally, n equals 1, like I can't just extrapolate that to everybody because that's poor practice. But like, we understand certain things about physiology. I'm like, how's this a thing? So it's primarily that, and honestly, it's people are going to have phobias for everything. So in a certain capacity, you kind of like sneak it in there at a certain stage. So I mean, I'm not saying everybody's going to be doing Nordics or certain exercises like that, but introducing things in a very obviously and clearly progressively overloadable way, like from a calisthenic and slowly loading perspective. And it could be any phobia or any myth that it still exists. But those are the majors. I'm like, I can explain it from a mechanistic standpoint or a deeper physiology standpoint. I can try to break out the protractors and do the levers and stuff like that from a physics standpoint, but nobody's going to do that. They just are going to go based on their gut and their feeling. But I can go from like a principle stance on progressive overload as well. And I can invoke Wolff's law and be like, yeah, all of your structural components also experience progressive overload. And I'm going to say hypertrophy, even though it's hypertrophy, but the way that your muscle grows is by progressively overloading it slowly but surely over time, by giving it a ever increasing degree of challenge that keeps the stimulus of overload the same over time. You just keep, no matter how much you adapt, you keep shoving the goalpost slightly further. Your ligaments, your bones, your tendons, your hesitate to say cartilage, because no, I'm not going to speak out of turn there, but your ligaments, your tendons, your bones, they also have mechanisms of remodeling like that. So the more pressures they experience, it's slower. It's a slower remodeling process, but they exist. So it's like I can go in a dumb amount of different directions. It's about which is the one that lands with that person. And sometimes you just don't. You just don't. You give them the ability to do so without them realizing it, so that where is it probably going to happen the most for them? Everyday life. The kind of person that is afraid of knees over toes is probably not going to be an athlete. It's probably not going to be a very, very competitive lifter of any discipline. It's probably going to be like a gen popper that's either a civilian in the gym, or they're getting into the gym later in life and they have the preconceived notions or the pre-existing pain oftentimes too. And so you just sort of course correct all the things that could be contributing to that from like previous parts in even our conversation. And then when it happens, they just don't even notice that it happened, right? Because if I were to drop a pen on the ground, I'm not going to hip hinge. I'm not going to brace for it. I'm just going to round my spine. That is like another part of people's phobias, is a rounded spine position. Right. I'm just going to do it, right? And so you're accounting kind of like for that part. You're making it so that they're as pain-free and as accessible as possible, even without them realizing it's happening. Because usually when it's going to happen and be most meaningful to them is like in everyday life, where they don't even need to notice it happening anymore. So most of the time you address it by sneaking it in such a way that only you as the coach kind of know.
I like it. Kiani, you got anything else?
No, I was just gonna say before my brother came in to give an outfit check. I was gonna say that that's pretty much like how I try to. I just didn't know if you had any other like tips, because I feel like it's either one or the other, like one's end of the spectrum or the other, which can be tough. But I think the progressive overload analogy for like how you build muscle kind of relates to everything. Like if you want to get better at something, you do it more often in a way that you can tolerate, and over time you're able to tolerate more. So I like that. I was just asking for a friend.
Yeah, people. When it was particularly relevant when we had our son, but it's everywhere. It's like knees over toes scares people, flexion of the spine scares people. We had our kiddo, and like, yeah, so new mother, you're not supposed to lift your own body for X amount of months because truly you have gone through a very transformational and devastating process of giving a child or giving birth to a child, but also you have to physically carry this child out, unless you have someone helping you, which go me. But like you still have to do life, right? Like they say these things and then you're on your own. And this is true. It's a metaphor for everything. Like you're going to be found in situations where like your phobia of your knees over toes, you'll probably find yourself in an everyday life situation. You don't even realize it's coming, that you got to do that. Or putting your arm over your head because you are convinced you have a tear or you have frozen shoulder. Like situations coming, and just knowing that you're going to have to be responsible for that no matter what. Like my wife was like, she was walking around like within like 30 seconds of coming off the table, and they're like, no, slow down. Like, I mean, I agree, kind of slow down, but you're going to be found in these situations, inevitably, where life forces your hand.
Yeah, and you should just want to be prepared for it. That's my whole ideal and philosophy when it comes to like training and especially rehab. It's like if you have to do it for life, I think it's in your best interest to just be prepared for it as much as you can.
Yeah, so, rehab is it's a and I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's a scary prison that people put themselves in as someone that you do rehab for people, but then people believe that they are their rehab protocol or their previous diagnosis forever. Like they identify as, I've had this problem, like I tore my labrum or I herniated a disc. And then you give them the protocol, you see them X amount of times, you rehab the thing, and they never make that final step into let's get back into progressive overload. Let's go back to it. And it's wild because you see it all the time. And every gym I've ever been at, there's that person that comes in with their green TheraBand, their yoga block, and like their foam roller. And they've been doing the same routine for like 8 years. They just go to the corner, do that, and then maybe walk on a treadmill and leave. I'm like, but
why?
It would have blanket, just not even knowing what it is. It would have healed on its own without any intervention by now. Like do stuff.
Yep. I personally don't like the whole separation between rehab and training. Like I have in the clinic, I have tons of patients who are like, "Oh, am I ready for personal training?" And I'm like, "There's what we're doing in here. Like you're literally lifting, like you're squatting, a trap bar, deadlifting. All this stuff is no different from personal training. Just I know your injury history and your body structure and what works for you. Like there's no difference. So I just wish that wasn't so prevalent in the world.
Yeah,
I think now with things like Prescript and physical therapists like you, Kiani, that have the strength and conditioning background, and with places that I've been in the corrective realm, I feel like there is now it's still slow, but I feel like there is more so that shift of, hey, there actually are good, credible coaches out there that can merge, the rehab, the return to play, the strength and conditioning, all as a collective. And I think that's a great way to be going, but it's still small, because you get people still that they don't know any better. They're like, oh, well, I'm gonna, see my doctor first, and I'm going to physical therapy, and
I don't care what your doctor says.
Exactly. We could have, if you go to a credible, knowledgeable person, those people would work together to get you back on to your field of play, which for most people is life.
I don't have anything else to add. That was my little rant.
Hey, I will take it. This will be the first episode with you, Eric, because I definitely want to dive more once we start talking about like sports performance and stuff like that. When you started talking about shin angles, I'm also a sprint coach, so I really was like, ooh, we could definitely talk about, shapes and angles from there. But it was great having you on. Where can people find you? What do you have upcoming? And if people want to, reach out to you more, work with you possibly, how do they go about that?
Yeah, the central hub is all Instagram. I technically have a website as well, but it's fairly dormant. I do intend on sort of making it more of a very similar platform as my social media, like my Instagram. But right now, at Eric Bugera is the social media platform, the Instagram, where you'll find all my content, all my posts, all the videos that we discussed today, a lot of written content. It's all geared towards coaches or trainees themselves as well. It's designed to be consumable, probably more tapped airing on the side of complexity towards the training side of the trainer side of things, but it should be available for everybody. But it's a ton of basically just educational or philosophical content in the realm of fitness. There you'll also find my website. Basically it's the place where you can buy stuff. Like I do offer one-to-one online customized programming, basically for everybody. But again, it very rapidly evolves into an educational process. So while everybody benefits, coaches benefit significantly as well, because I can basically, you just put a coin in me, and whichever level of detail you want or need for you, for a coach themselves to apply to their clients, whatever it happens to be, those are the services. There's general consulting services as well. In the new year, I have a few things that I'm not entirely prepared to announce publicly that are going to be coming out as well. Just know that the price is going up. Let's go with that.
Price is going up 2026.
Hey,
Yeah.
not mad at you.
Well,
yeah, man. Once again, thank you, and hope to talk to you soon. So hopefully you guys will all like, share, and subscribe. This is another episode of the No BS Fitness Prescription Podcast with an unhinged approach. Talk to you guys soon.